Hello, everybody. Welcome here today to this webinar, 10 Secrets to Successful Experiences for Your Family Partner at Conferences. My name is Ray Martins. I am a knowledge broker with the Family Engagement Research Training Program. I am very happy to share this conversation with you today, which has been a long time coming, in fact. And this is a part of our FER Knowledge Exchange Program, in which we share opportunities and conversations that might not necessarily have an evidence basis yet, but everybody's talking about them already. So we might as well start some more conversation and see what comes about it. And this is one of those as well, too. In eventuality of promoting the notion of belonging, that everybody in conference spaces deserves to feel welcome, to be seen, to be recognized, things like that. And that starts with that first introduction to this very new space for some people. So we are going to get started. First off, before we get everything going here, I just wanted to share a land acknowledgement, but not only am I in Treaty 7 territory with Métis Nation Districts 5 and 6, but I also wanted to share a bit of knowledge that I recently learned. I took a Métis beading course a little while ago, and these are the earrings that I made, and I was pretty excited about them. And I shared them on Facebook. And one of the things that, as an artist type personality, that I found in this space was I kind of went, oh, I didn't do so great. Oh, but that's what learning is all about. You just kind of get a little fussy with your work. And someone kind of called me in and said, when it comes to the notion of this tradition, it is important to recognize the fact that mistakes are okay in what you create in life, because it is a message from the creator to remind you that it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. And this is why I will keep these and wear them proudly. And now let's get into our next conversation here, which is an introduction to our lovely group of people who have decided to come and share their thoughts and opinions on this subject with me today. Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself to start out with?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ray, and thanks for having us here today. So my name is Vanessa Thomas. I am a postdoctoral researcher working with CanChild, Center for Childhood Disability Research at McMaster University, as well as two health organizations called Children's Treatment Network, and then in Ontario, and the Rehabilitation Center for Children in Manitoba. I currently live on Williams Treaty and Treaty 13 territory, and I use she, her pronouns.
And Kinga, you're next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ray, for having me here. My name is Kinga Pozniak. I am also a postdoctoral researcher at CanChild, Center for Childhood Disability Research at McMaster. And I work on a lot of research projects that have people with lived experience, so parents and youth, as partners. So I'm very excited to be part of this conversation today.
Awesome. And Donna.
Thank you for having me. I'm Donna Thompson, and I am a parent partner in research. I am also a co-founder and co-developer, co-instructor of the Family Engagement and Research course and the Leadership Academy, and other programs as well at the Family Engagement and Research program at CanChild, McMaster University, and happy to be here today.
Wonderful. And as mentioned before, my name is Ray Martins. I'll be the facilitator for today. I work as a knowledge broker with the Family Engagement and Research Training Program. And I have also had 10 years experience as a research partner as of this year, which has been quite the ride for myself in terms of starting out early as that person who was quite nervous being dropped into this type of work, to now feeling confident and helping mentor other people through this process as well. So when we get started with the idea of thinking about research conferences or healthcare conferences, this is kind of what we envision here. We got our keynotes, we have our poster presentations and things like that. But one component that we don't talk often enough about is the sense of community that comes in these spaces as well, too. And it is always wonderfully exciting to connect with people in person. I was just talking with Kinga before we started recording here about it was nice. We're going to see each other next month and how I'm super psyched for that. That is another piece that we wish to speak of today, and how that is reflected in the lives of people with lived experience and how we can support that experience with our lived experience partners. And these subjects that we're going to speak today speak to three sort of common themes, one of them being conference logistics, another being that sense of community that I just spoke about, but also about clear and compassionate communication and where that fits and how. Because getting into that new space, this is actually a picture that I asked ChatGPT to make, what it means to be dropped into a conference space and kind of feel overwhelmed and confused. And it kind of worked for me in terms of what this looked like here. I do certainly remember this feeling, and I have helped a lot of family members in this space too, with and kind of promoting this idea that there are no ridiculous questions, and there are some very honest ones that have come across my plate in over the years as well too. So this is a question that is going to be open to the group here today. And that is, when it comes to staying in conversation throughout the conference, what has that looked like for you? Where has that gone awry in some ways? Where has it been positive? Things that kind of stick out as remarkable for you in one way or another. For a bit of an example to start, that might be for me. I loved it when people checked in to see how I'm feeling through the process, if there was any questions about what I heard through conference lectures, if something was too high level in language, if that could potentially be explained to me and things like that. And any thoughts in your...
I guess I'll start. Thinking back to the first couple of conferences that I attended, I didn't know very many people. I was probably similar to that image you found, Ray. And so I found myself listening and asking a lot of questions. One thing that does happen is at the beginning of the conference, the beginning of the day, usually breakfast is provided. So you get your plate and you go into the main conference room where there are usually round tables set up. And if you go to a table, there might be one other person there, or you're looking for a place to sit. You're likely not going to be alone. People will turn to you and say, "Hi, where are you from, and what is your interest?" I think people should have a script ready. I didn't. I sort of bumbled my way through. I did not have support. But if I were to give some advice to patient partners going to the first conference for the very first time, I would have a script ready about who you are and what your particular experience is that relates to research, and what are some of your most interesting presentations at the conference. Those topics are going to find common ground at the table. So often the reason why we feel so awkward is that lived experience is very different from professional research experience, which are effectively people's jobs. But there are, as we know, lots of common ground. So finding that common ground starts with, how are you going to introduce yourself? And it usually happens first thing in the morning at the breakfast table. And I wonder if others have thoughts about that too.
I love what you said there, Donna, and I think there's an important differentiation between what you're saying about the point of being there versus talking about the experiences that brought you there, which to sit in some of those, the good, the bad, the ugly, depending on what those were, that's a lot to sit in the body as well too, not just from overwhelming somebody else, but just to relive those moments for the sake of what is effectively small talk, if you will. So to think about that differentiation is being trauma informed for yourself in its own way as well. Kinga.
I also love what Donna said. My thinking went in a different direction because I was thinking about how researchers can like loop patient and family partners into the conversation. And one thing that I find, and this might not work for all research teams, it works when you have like a large research team. For example, when people from CanChild go to one of the big childhood disability conferences, there's always at least a dozen of us, right? So what's really helpful is to have like a WhatsApp channel that everybody gets looped into, right? So then people will post, okay, a few of us are going for lunch at this place. Whoever wants to come, please join, right? And just make sure the family partners are added to the WhatsApp chat so that they can always come along, and there will always be somebody who'll be like there present to bring them into the conversation. But even if that's not possible, even if it's, let's say it's just one researcher from an institution and a family partner, there's still a way to connect at that personal level, right? Have each other's phone numbers, right? Text each other, hi, I'm going for breakfast. Where are you? Do you want to grab a coffee? Right? It's not hard to do, right? So just this sense that we're there together, we're a team. Let's hang out and enjoy each other's company and do this thing together.
I love that so much. And honestly, that's one of my favorite traditions, I think, with the entire team. And you get to see fun photos along the way and see what people are up to. But also it makes what feels like a large space a whole lot more intimate as well, too, because you do stay connected in that way. And Vanessa, did you have any thoughts about this as well?
Yeah, thank you. And Kinga and Donna, amazing points, and tapping into a lot of things that I had written down. So that's perfect. I think the only other two things that I would add, first, just being about when we do find those opportunities to connect and stay in contact and throughout the conference, checking in about the presentations, the material, who they might be networking with, connecting with, things like that, but also just about other things like, oh, have you been to this city before? Do you want to go explore something? Do you want to go shopping? Like we did that a lot in Belgium. And then also one thing that I always try to remind myself is not assuming that people always want to come and hang out with you or connect with you, and kind of respecting those boundaries too. And that if reaching out and having those opportunities to connect, but also respecting if somebody just wants to kind of be by themselves, absorb things alone, and then just always extending that opportunity, I think, is important, but also keeping in mind and respecting the boundaries too.
I love that. And I think that's a really important part too. But also too, one little like addition to what you said there, Vanessa, is this idea of, say there are sessions that your partner has no interest in attending, go tell them it's okay to go have fun. Sometimes people need that permission. Like they feel it needs to be official every time, but you need to sometimes give people permission to have fun along the way too.
Yes.
Kaya, you had a thought.
Oh, I just wanted to add to the idea of fun because I think it's really important and actually like from a team building perspective as well, that like to do something as a group, as a team that's not just at the conference. So for example, right now we're planning I'll be traveling to a conference with a team of 4 parents and 3 youth participants, or sorry, not participants, they're youth partners. So we're thinking about like, what can we do as a team that will work for, the parents and the teenagers, that's going to be like teenage friendly and accessible at the same time. So, I'm on Facebook groups, researching, fun things for teenagers in the city that we're going to, so that we can do something that will hopefully, be a good experience for everybody, so that everybody on the team, including the youth partners, can get something out of that experience.
That is fantastic. I love that you're doing that. And I will keep an eye out for ideas myself too and see if something comes across my desk. Well, our next one is this idea of building confidence in navigating this space. And I think that can come from a number of different ones, from logistics of the hotel to getting from the airport to the hotel to just about the confidence of being able to stand and have a conversation with people and be a keynote speaker or a guest speaker and things like that. I actually found out recently that one partner that I connect with on a regular basis stole a joke that I gave one time in a talk about the fact that they were excited that they were surrounded by doctors in this room, and if they pass out, they'll know that they will be okay and that they can be revived. And I just love that for them because they got a really good laugh. Things like that help people build confidence. Has there been an example in your experience where that has been a confidence building moment in your thoughts?
I can start. I think, again, two things that I kind of think of here. Well, first is around the presentation skills. And I think just taking time to go over things, practice, help with scripts, help with notes, ideas to kind of help support the presentation process. And I think also like normalizing that like everybody feels nervous about presentations. I think of myself back in undergrad and I wouldn't sleep the night before I had a class presentation. And it's for everybody, right? And it just the more you practice, the more you get a hang of things do feel easier. So I think just having that open and frank conversation about like everybody feels this way and it's okay, and we're going to work together to help build some confidence and skills in this area. One thing that I always find fun too is just having the opportunity to introduce people to other people that someone they see might catch their eye and they might be like, oh, that talk was really cool, and like, hey, let's go over and chat with them, and helping to facilitate and supporting some of those conversations. Yeah, those are two initial things that kind of came to my mind here. And I love your points too, Ray, about helping with the logistics of like the hotel, when you get to the conference and registering, like all of those things too. I didn't think of that. So I think that's a really important point too.
Mm-hmm. And Kinga.
I think Vanessa covered that very well. I haven't thought about what researchers can do, not necessarily for their own family partners, but for just people with lived experience who are at conferences. When you see someone present on their lived experience, go up to them afterwards and thank them, ask them a question, show engagement, right? It doesn't help them prep beforehand for that particular presentation because they've already done it, but it builds their confidence for future presentations, right? Because they especially if they were nervous or whatnot, go up to them and show interest and express appreciation for whatever they shared, because I do think that kind of builds them up for the future. And I think that's really invaluable to get that feedback, like, yes, I did well, like, that went okay, I can do this again. So I think that's something that doesn't cost researchers anything, but I think it can it can really mean a lot, especially if it's somebody's first talk. And I mean that goes for everything, and everybody, not just family partners, but first time presenters, graduate students, whoever. I think that's just a nice collegial thing that we can all do for each other.
I love that. And I think that that's kind of important, even too, in spaces where that might not be on everybody else's radar, but you set that example for other people, because I've been that person who has shared deep, vulnerable moments of my life. And then all of a sudden it's quiet for 2 seconds and they go, and the next thing on the agenda. And it sucks. There's no other way to describe it. It's just an awkward feeling. Donna, did you have any thoughts in this?
I really appreciate everyone's comments on this. I think it's been a great discussion. I just had one little more thing to add. I think that, many of us are women, and it's really hard as women. We've been socialized to kind of um, downplay the value of our contributions. And so I think in terms of building your own confidence, part of it, like Vanessa said, is just practicing talking about your ideas. It will improve your fluency and your confidence in presentations and in representing your perspectives. I think though, I mean, I'm remembering that I went to a workshop once for women who were seeking to build leadership skills. And one of the exercises that we had to do was fill in the blank. I am an expert in, and you had to fill in the blank, write it down, and then speak it. Speak it to each other around the table. This was very, very difficult for us to do. And a lot of the women at this conference had big jobs, like in government law firms, etc. I was just representing family caregivers, but all of us went, "Oh, I'm not an expert in anything." And we had to declare ourselves as an expert in something. So I guess one thing that having been to lots and lots of conferences now, I always pay attention to the theme of the conference and think about, what does the theme of the conference mean to me, and what do I have to perhaps talk about vis-a-vis the theme? And I kind of have that ready to go in my back pocket. Um, and I think it's amazing, but the more you actually say, "I am an expert in," like say it to your family members, say it to the mirror, say it to people on your research team, and practice saying it. Everybody needs to do this, researchers included, because that makes us comfortable with ourselves and with what we know, and the idea of expressing what we know, I think.
I love that. I think that's a very important point, and that is one that helps people feel like they can affirm themselves in that moment as well too, when you start to get those butterflies. I just want to draw one brief comment to the business cards thing that I mentioned in the slides here. One thing that not a lot of people think about is that when you do connect with somebody and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I need your information," we don't think about carrying a pen and paper with us. $20 on the internet, get yourself some business cards that just say, Ray family partner and some contact information. That's enough to have something to carry in your pocket for those magical moments when you do find someone you want to stay connected with as well. And this is another kind of simplistic planning thing. I'm not sure there really needs to be a lot of thoughts on this, but other than just to kind of review the program together, think about places that you might like to go together as partners, but also to be that jargon translator, because in some cases we don't really think about the lived experience individuals in the room, and we find that speakers can be a bit on the high level, given some of the clinical studying that I've done in the past. I've tried to be that for people, but if you can be that translator, that's always a very vital piece. And who is your partner in this space? This was a question that came out of a conversation with Donna and myself yesterday, and it was this idea that we don't really speak to the notion of, like, we coexist in the same space a lot, and we evaluate in that way. Like, people when we evaluate conferences, we talk about, you were here and you had a nice time, or you had a bad time. Like, that's kind of how we talk about the outcomes of these spaces. But when it comes to engaging with one another, this idea of being a lived experience individual, I put out this argument yesterday that lived experience individuals are lived experience colleagues, and that they deserve to be engaged. How can we consider small efforts, large advocacy in this space? How can we support people in helping them, our partners, be seen? I think is an important question here today. Does anybody have any thoughts to start out with? One example that I gave yesterday was at the lunch table, in terms of conversations to be had. You can encourage this with your partners to start out with, is this idea of writing on your name card, "Ask me about this interest," or something about that, things about that person, where people can find that easier approach, like where it's not like, "I know you're here for a reason. Tell me about your trauma." That's not the next question that you want out of somebody's mouth. But at least it's a conversation starter that is simplistic in nature. There is some argument to be had about changing the scope of people's perspectives who are professionals in the room, and recognizing the fresh faces, the lived experience individuals, in terms of the value that they add, and welcoming them into this space and making them feel welcome. but that is just one example. Is there things that you feel could be supportive in that way? Kinga.
One thing that I'm thinking about, and this comes in when presentations are delivered, what I find that there's often, sort of a formula with the person with lived experience, shares their lived experience, shows, pictures, or in the case of child with disability conferences, their child, baby pictures, which are always really cute. And I think that's like absolutely fine um, for people with lived experience to share their lived experience, but there's no reason why they can't also present on other parts of the study, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it depends on the study, right? But for example, the kind of research that I do that has to do with people's experiences, the partners with lived experience are perfectly capable to present, the methodology, the results, the discussion, the implications, right? So there is no reason, again, depending on what the research study is about, but in the kind of research I do, why they can't, why they can't present the like not just the flavor, the lived experience flavor of the study, but actually um, the other parts that are normally or traditionally left to researchers. So that's something I'm definitely thinking about, and thinking about how, whether if partners want to share those parts of the presentation, then they absolutely should be able to do that.
I love that so much. And that actually brought back, I was at a trainee research day recently, and I saw a poster about disabled children who use mobility aids like pummel walkers and things like that, and how they best find using communicator devices. And what this person did with their research posters, they had pictures of the kids doing awesome things and using their devices. And it was just, I can imagine how much joy that would give to me as a parent to be seen, to see my kid in that sort of a way as well too. So there's lots of ways to be creative, and as another friend of mine says, think outside the box, but ethically in that way too. Donna, you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to what you said, Vanessa, earlier about making introductions. And I was thinking just elaborating on an introduction and maybe having something at the ready to say, I'd like you to meet the parent partner on our project. And, you know, I think part of our role at conferences is also to educate people about family engagement and research, what it means, why it's worth doing. And in that context, maybe people could say, this is so and so, parent partner on my team, and who influenced the research question in the following way. So you just have something really short and sweet about a particular contribution that the parent has made, especially if you're introducing to another researcher. And often I'm just thinking of a project that I'm working on currently at Sick Kids, having to do with navigation and transition in complex care. And one of the parent partners said at the very beginning in identifying the research question, well, you're not always transferring care in the adult sector to who you think it is. Ask the parent who maybe a subspecialist is going to be primary for that person. That was a really aha moment for the principal investigator, who just said, wow, okay, we're writing that in immediately. And I did not see that one coming. And that was a significant contribution that parent partner made. Um, and so oftentimes, you could pick out something that was particularly pivotal or important in the in the research project that you're presenting on, that you can just use as a part of an introduction to help people immediately understand what does this person bring to research.
That's a wonderfully important point, Donna, for sure. And I will add as well, too, when it comes to this, is that sometimes people come with limitations due to chronic illness. And I'm realizing that myself now, after being diagnosed with a neurological condition a little over a year ago, is what it means to have a rough day when you are away from home. And to be open and honest about those moments as well, too, where sometimes it's not about like there will be days where it is all about meeting new people and things like that. But sometimes you just want to kind of cruise in neutral as well. And so just to keep the lines of communication open as well. Kinga.
I actually think Vanessa didn't get a chance to speak yet, so maybe she should go and then
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just I won't speak too long, but just I hope I'm interpreting this right. But this conversation is also just making me think about I think acknowledging and celebrating like the diverse identities and skills that we all have and bring. So like even researchers, you're not just a researcher, right? Like maybe you also do all of these other really cool things and you're just not a person with lived or living experience. Maybe you also have a degree in education, or you worked in policy, or you did all of these other really cool things. And it makes me think of one of the youth partners that I worked with, worked in the policy space and had this knowledge of policy that came in handy, although it wasn't directly related to the project, right? And so having those conversations about who you are outside of just your quote unquote role or the hat you bring, because I think we all wear multiple hats. And so tapping into those skills, or someone's, I'm actually really good at graphic design. Perfect. Do you want to help with this? Or maybe you could lead this part. And so I think, having that conversation too is also really helpful.
Absolutely, completely agree. And Kinga, did you have a final thought with this one?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say what Vanessa said. So thank you, Vanessa. The one
We're in
one
sync.
thought I would add to that is that I think it's very important to recognize that family partners are not just a mom, right? But a mom who happens to have a PhD in biochemistry, or is an educator, or is a blogger, or is somebody else, right? So to really highlight those other identities, but also highlight our own, right? So I may be a researcher who also has kids and loves ultimate frisbee. I don't. I just made that up. Right. But I think it's important to highlight the human side of us as well. Right. And I think if we start to see everybody, right, ourselves and each other as people, we'll all have a much better experience of being at conferences.
I love that so much. That I'm glad you shared that. Another aspect that I know this is a bit of a loaded slide here, but sometimes within this type of environment, you need other alternative ways because life happens. Sometimes there's an unexpected inpatient stay before a conference, despite the fact that you're planning to come. Or there are people who don't necessarily feel like they have the ability to travel just because of childcare constraints, things like that. There are things that limit a person's ability to go out and travel somewhere for whatever reason that may be. And so, have there been ways in which you have incorporated a partner's experience or been a part of that without, with keeping that flexibility in mind? For me, traveling overseas is not the greatest experience for me at the moment. So I've had to limit that for myself. But I have shared videos, and what I ended up actually doing was I used TikTok, and then I saved the video to my photo album, and I just cut off the marker that has the advertising on the end of that. And that was an easy, quick way for me to film a video that was in the right format without having somebody who might not necessarily be technologically inclined to do so. It's a quick and easy guide in order for that to happen. Has that been something of an experience for the three of you in terms of what flexibility has looked like or needed to look like?
Yeah, I can start. It's always on Zoom. You never know when somebody's going to speak. So I apologize if someone was going to say something. Yeah, so I can think of an example right now for a conference that we have coming up in the fall. One of our youth partners wanted to join. Something has come up. They're not able to join. So we're pivoting and we're going to do a pre-recorded video. And she had the idea of instead of just presenting, we're going to do like a Q&A style, her and I, and we're going to go through the points of the presentation in that format because she finds that easier for her and she thinks it'll be more impactful, which I agree. And so I think having those kinds of opportunities and flexibility, and then like other things, like simple things like developing slides, contributing in different ways like that too. I think if we think of the more like traditional oral presentations, there's lots of opportunities there. And then of course, posters too, same thing. They can help with the design if they can't be there in person.
Absolutely. And Kinga.
I also have, I'm actually also in the midst of planning a session with 4 youth or 3 youth partners. And it'll be all of their first time traveling to conferences. So we're kind of talking about what that's going to look like. And the format that I think we're going to go with is we already have pre-recorded videos of them because they've made videos for some of the KT and recruitment and things like that. So I think we will share those. But I think it might be a lot to just give them like a scripted piece and put them on the spot. So we're gonna show those videos if they're still comfortable with them being shown, and then just kind of like leave it open and see how they feel in the moment, right? Because it's impossible to predict. They've never been at a conference before, so it's hard to know how they're going to feel in the moment. So not to put them on the spot, I think we're just going to leave it open and just kind of, do you want to jump in and say something? If not, great. And if you do, we'll budget the time to give them the opportunity to do that. So I think it's important to, just be very flexible and, obviously talk to the partners and see how they feel, and have a plan B and just be happy to go with the flow and, figure out, what will work.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to raise another important point here as well, too, is that we still have COVID and a global pandemic that is worth mentioning here as well, too. And that this does remain a bit of a disability, this remains a disability rights issue. And so when it comes to people's levels of safety and risk associated with that, people who travel make the choice to absorb that risk. And sometimes that's a bit of something for someone to wrestle with in terms of that. So to provide a safe, supported space to say that with people and the people that they care for, that their conversation that they need to have with themselves and the decisions that they make are in a judgment-free space in terms of either going, not going. Masking and solidarity is another thought that can be added to that as well. And that is it's an important conversation to have. Donna, do you have any thoughts in this area as well?
I think everyone has said so eloquently everything that was in my mind on this one. So I don't have anything to add.
That's not a problem for sure. I did touch on the disability and health accommodations here as well too, but also when it comes to being an advocate, I was talking to a friend recently who was asked to deliver a keynote. And they said, would it be okay if you mask for this because we have immune compromised people in the room? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. So to advocate if there's more comfort in that space it's an important thing to do. And in some cases that might come with taking steps on your own. Sometimes that comes with talking to conference planners. Are there any other thoughts that people have in this area as well?
I'm thinking of a conference that happened last year where there were some challenges because with accessibility, because there were wheelchair users and people with visual impairments, etc., hearing impairments at the conference. And people were sort of trying to figure out on the fly what they needed. It wasn't well thought out, wasn't well planned. It ended up being okay, but for example, it's hard to foresee what exactly the navigational challenges are going to be for people who have mobility, who use mobility aids. So in this particular instance, it turned out to be really problematic to stand in line to get lunch or breakfast where there's a long queue and these long buffet tables, and you have to use two hands to hold a drink and a plate, and you're somehow supposed to propel yourself in your chair as well. I think one of the key things that I would hope that um, teams would understand is if someone needs those kind of accommodations, have somebody available, whether it's a navigator or personal assistant that's available through the conference organizing committee, or if not that, then somebody on your team who is assigned to buddy up with that person and make sure hold their plate through the line. You know, because I think that what that showed me was these can be real barriers that leave people feeling rotten, hurt, angry, and simply nobody foresaw that particular challenge. So I I thought to myself, wow, that tells me that a person needs to be assigned to that individual to help them navigate, um, particularly those challenges that nobody could foresee.
Absolutely. I can say from experience what it meant to be in an inaccessible space in that way, and then to continue to have a rotten day, unfortunately, as I left because I just gave up existing in that space. Someone ended up having a medical incident. And so I went from the stress of inaccessibility to fight or flight circumstances, and then proceeded to, for the next 2 weeks, just be barely able to get off my couch. It was just a lot to deal with. And I think that that is something that just needs to be recognized. Another aspect here is the potential for things like having a trauma-informed mindset and what that looks like. One example would be watching a movie that was filmed in a number of different healthcare spaces called Falling Through the Cracks. I have not seen the end of it. I've seen it 5 times, but I had not seen the end of it because I realized that that was something that my brain and my body could not tolerate in that moment. And to share that with other people is one thing. I've had a few people reach out to me on this subject, talking about what it means to watch somebody leave clearly in distress for a bathroom, and understanding what is needed in that moment, and needing a support person in that time, and how can we recognize that before it gets that far. So this is why this felt like a very important point to raise here as well. Now, did you two have any thoughts to add to this as well, Kinga?
Well, I'm thinking back to Donna's idea from the previous, from before, about the conference organizers should have a designated person, right? Who can be helpful, and then of course the teams should also be watching out for each other, right? And there should be a buddy, so that if they see somebody leaving in tears, they can follow and check up on the person and see, okay, well, did you want to go talk to that person, what do you need? So I think I would think the same principles apply.
Absolutely. And there is some risk mitigation that comes with perhaps having family partners on your planning committee for your conference to begin with, where possible as well. Another thing is to co-design your poster. Now, I mentioned the photos of kids on the one poster earlier, and I think that is a brilliant idea. But I think that's also great training as well for knowledge mobilization is so you did all of this stuff. Um, you did all of this work. How would you tell the story of the study? And to kind of gain some of those points and think about how that can be put in, whether you write it together or whether you take those themes and add that as a part of the writing process. There's a variety of different ways. And how about you, Kinga, as the investigator in the room? Do you have any thoughts about designing posters?
Absolutely. I mean, at this point, I don't know how you can deliver a talk that's not, or a poster that's not co-designed.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that should be the basic. I think the next, I'm blessed with very, very confident and very accomplished and very capable family partners on my team, to the point where they take the lead. And I've had some of them say, well, there's this conference coming up. I would like to present something about this study. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. Like, let us know how we can help you. Right. So this person is very capable and, wants to take the lead and, wants to take the lead on designing the poster and doing the presentation. And we're here to help. But we're also there to support our, like, all our colleagues, right, including our family partners. So I think everybody should play whatever role they want to, and researchers' job is to kind of, like all our job is to empower each other as much as possible, right? So people should play whatever role they feel they want to take on.
I love that so much. That is wonderful. Now, Donna, has there been an experience with co-designing a talk or a poster that has resonated with you in the past?
Um, I think I think I guess I'm thinking about a poster that I co-presented with Jan Willem Gorter from Canchild. And first of all, I'm not a designer. I don't do the actual design, but it gets passed around. What are your thoughts? Certainly, I always look at posters from if I saw this, didn't know anything about the study, do I understand it? Is this a good visual representation of the work? Is it easy to understand? Does it capture my imagination? Just as a layperson, I ask myself those questions. And I guess we kind of discovered something because in the in the design, and it was kind of accidental, but part of the co-design process is if you're going to be co-presenting the poster at the conference with a patient partner or a family partner, um, part of it is just not only just looking at the design, but it's how are we going to talk about this poster?
Mm.
What roles are we going to take in describing what you see in this poster? And we found by accident just a really great way to describe our project because it had the project was represented by like a snake kind of thing and the benchmarks of the project from beginning to end, and we were kind of halfway through. So we were able to say, oh, we're here and point on that snake. That's where we
Ah,
are in this project. And so I think that showed me, um, like, does this design enable a parent partner and a researcher to talk about the project effectively together? What are our talking points here? So part of that design process should also, I think, include how are we going to talk about it, not just look at it.
absolutely. And like another example might be to have a QR code that points to a blog in which your partners talked about it. To get their version of things. There's a variety of ways to be creative. Another concept is the better poster format, which Kinga actually did a forum of for a project called The Measures of Processes of Care, where there was kind of in the middle, there were the common themes that were brought out about what they found within the study itself. To tell that story was a simplified version, but also visually accessible to people as well, to say, this is what was important here. And that brings back to that pointing back that you mentioned, Donna, that it brought that capability for a partner to be able to talk about that as well. When it comes to barriers of like the logistical aspects of things, this is a conversation that could probably devote an entire hour to itself. And I think the primary thing really ends up being, if you can alleviate a barrier, by all means, please do. But I think that we all collectively are in agreement that if there's advocacy that can be done in this space in terms of alleviating some of those barriers, definitely try. And that can sometimes be more on the institution side as well. It can be with conference planners. There any ways that we can help that road be simplified for everybody. It's something that we all directly benefit from in the long run as well. Were there any tips or tricks that you have worked with in this respect, Kinga?
Yeah, this is a hard one because it's the barriers typically are not just are bigger than just the researcher level.
Yeah.
So it's hard for individual research teams to solve that on their own.
Yeah.
I would say for conference planners, the cost of registration for family partners is one. The process of doing it is another, right? I've had examples where I've had to email the conference organizers and give them names of the family partners so that the family partners could get a reduced rate. I don't know why that's necessary, right? You should just be able to click at registration who you are and pay the appropriate rate. Reimbursement is a problem with our university for sure. I think many universities, because it takes so long, there's paperwork. I think one thing researchers can do is just communicate with family partners about, this will take a long time, keep all of your receipts, right? Like, these are the receipts that you need. Researchers don't always know all of this, just because institutional rules about what you need to get reimbursed also keep changing. I know researchers who have put like the registration hotel, their family partners hotels on their own credit cards, right? And just so the family partners don't have to do that. I think it's very nice of people to do that, of individual researchers. I don't think this should be the system-wide solution. I think we need better solutions than, well, if you're traveling with 4 family partners, just put all of their hotels on your credit card and you can figure this out later, right? So I think at the institutional level, that's something that needs to be attended to, because there are a lot of barriers when people have to pay for things up front and get reimbursed later. And as far as I know, most universities don't have company cards or prepaid company like credit cards or something that family partners can use and spend. So yes, unfortunately I don't have solutions. I do see a lot of barriers, but I think the solutions would have to be really at that institutional level.
Absolutely. And in some cases, we find ourselves policy-wise with families in marginalized populations where things are becoming more difficult when it comes to income for a variety of reasons. And so there maybe needs to really consider how you pivot and still ensure that their voice is heard and seen in these spaces as well too. But that's a longer conversation to have. But also, one thing I wanted to leave here today and conclude with is the idea of following up and feedback, and offering just time for some conversation that might have uncomfortable experiences to share, but just leaving it out there and saying, like, we're okay with hearing the good, the bad, and the ugly in that way, and to see what went on and how they can learn from that and how you can learn from that as well too. Because when we're open and honest and saying that, you as a student, a trainee, postdoc, you're all learning here as well too in terms of this space. And so when a partner has that opportunity to provide that honest feedback, then that helps you learn along the way. And so when everybody's open and honest, then that's when those channels are open to have those productive conversations about feedback as well. Donna, did you have any thoughts on this?
Just one really, and I'm going to borrow here from Sarah Pott, who is a colleague in the FER program at CanChild. And she uses a model of debrief and inquiry called I Like, I Wonder. And I think what you want to do here in terms of debriefing and making space for things that didn't go well. Let's talk about everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start with what we like. That puts people at their ease. What did go well? And then using the words, I wonder. I wonder how it would have been if something else had happened other than the way it did play out. But you're making people feel comfortable to share things that did not go well. Because oftentimes, there'll be a circle, let's debrief, what went well, what didn't go well, and people clam up. And people may tend not to share what didn't go well because they don't want to make an uncomfortable social situation with their team. But you want a fulsome conversation here, and you also want to share learning from what didn't go well. So I think in that context, I really like, I wonder.
I think that's a really important tool that we can all bring into our lives for sure. So at the end, this is a real time to build people up when you have that chance to bring family partners into this space where they can feel valued and informed and engaged. And when you create these opportunities for them to learn about the process of collaboration in conference spaces, it helps them feel like this is more of an inclusive environment and they can meaningfully contribute to things like conversations along the way that and feel empowered in the ability to do so. And this really helps to improve the foundations of collaboration itself when we mentor these concepts together, because this promotes a sense of belonging. And we have, oh, yeah. Thanks, Kinga, for being here today, and to the rest of the team as well, too. And you can get in contact with us through the email address that will be put into the comments of the YouTube channel as well too. Thank you for having spending your time with us here today.